Right, so we're back, and I have taken the time to take the depth charges off the sprue and glue them together. They're going to need a bit of cleaning up, but we're there. We've got the exhausts glued onto the exhaust shroud. Let them set up so we can clean them up. I kept one depth charge just so you can see. Comes in 3 pieces, 2 halves and a tail section. There's a little bit of clean up here on the tail section needing done to get the sprue attachment point off. Be very careful because there is ridge detail on the tail of the depth charge you don't want to take off, so you've got to use the blade of the scalpel just as a bit of a sculpting tool to remove the remains of the sprue attachment point, and then just gently scrape across the part to remove any flash. 2 halves glued together quite nicely actually. They do have quite nice detail as well. So they have the priming fuse on the front of the bomb, or depth charge, and they also have, I'm assuming this is an arming fuse on the back as well. I'm not sure, not an expert on Coastal Command ordnance, but yeah, a bit of time here extra thin, and then pop the tail on. Make sure the end is sitting square. Just there, see it's sitting square on those attachment points. Drop a glue on the fins. Push the tail home. Check alignment, so the alignment's fine. You can see on the sides where the fin has attached that there's a little bit of a gap, so they're going to need filling. When we clean them up, we'll need to use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer just to fill that gap in. Now, another thing I was looking at is this, I don't know, these wing tang vents or something on the top here, but there's these parts here. There's quite a considerable gap, so before I start painting, I'm going to glue these in now, and that's purely that we can come in here with Mr. Surfacer, get it in to the gap, and then let it set up. We can come in with a cotton bud and soaked in a little bit of cellulose thinners, and then just gently wipe that away to leave that filled. So I wanted to get that on first, so I can get that filled before we start painting. On the underside, we've got 2 aerial mounts here for the radio direction finder aerials. These holes here are for the depth charges. These holes here are for the struts, and these holes here I think are for fuel drainaways. So these are okay, as are these and these, but I'm not sure about the fit on these here. But I don't really want to put the brackets on until the wings attach to the aircraft so they don't get broken off, but I am going to put them on before we paint, purely so we can get the joint around nicely cleaned up and leave a good smooth surface for paint. So next job is, because I want to get these engines attached to the wing before I paint as well, so the next job is to paint these black, and then we'll come back in with some aluminium colour and dry brush them aluminium to highlight the cylinders, the engine, the gearbox, a reduction gearbox or final drive on the front of the engine. We'll need to paint a grey and neutral grey colour, and then we can do a little bit of oil weathering because these things leaked. Some of the photographs I've seen of World War II Catalinas, there's quite a bit of oil coming out of them as radial engines, so we can do a little oil wash on them, and then that'll give us an option to do a bit of detailing once we've gotten the aircraft painted and deckled and sealed. So enough waffling, I will get on and paint these, and then we can come back and look at dry brushing them. Right, we're back, and got the engines all primed up with a simple matte black, and we're going to look at doing some dry brushing for the cylinders, and then we've got some simple grey, just neutral grey matte for the reduction gears. Now this is Revell aqua colour, and I have to say, really like for brush painting, I really like Revell aqua colour. Obviously it's a true acrylic and that it thins with water, but this stuff also thins really well with Tamiya X20A, like really well, and it paints beautifully off the brush. Now just dug out some silver. You can see it's a really nice bright silver. We've got one of my old Dale & Rowley number 8 flat shader, and as per usual we're just getting the bulk of the paint off the brush, because we're going to dry brush and hopefully get the engines to pop a little bit. The detail on the fins is quite fine, but if we're just gentle and we'll just work our way around, and you can start to see already that the details popping out beautifully. Now there is actually an ignition wires molded into this, but we're going to be using the Edard photo etch ignition wires just to give it a bit more dimension. Need to be getting in between the front bank of cylinders to get the rear bank dry brushed. And the beauty with the Revell paints is they last for ages on the brush. The only other silver that I know that lasts like this is the colour buffables, that they last for ages on the brush too. But I can see here now the details starting to pop. I'll put a bit of a sheen underneath the colour coat with the grey we're going to put on, just to help with it, almost a bit of pre-shading. Now just remember, we are going to use a little bit of wash on these engines just to try and enhance that detail a bit more, but you're not going to see an awful lot of them. But the front row cylinders we definitely will see, and they're the ones we need to make sure that we've got highlighted. But that's looking quite nice. We'll do the second one. You see there's plenty of paint on that brush. And you can see the push rods are coming out nicely. If you think you need a bit more, then before you go back into the paint, just rub this where you've been rubbing the bulk of the paint off. Just pick some up off the paper towel. Watch this. There you go, see that? That paint's just popping out. You do want to get the dry brushing quite bright, purely because when we put a wash on it, we'll dull it down. When you're putting it on, work it in the bristles before you work it out the bristles, so you've got a good quantity of paint in there. And when you've just loaded the brush up again, then lighter strokes until you start using the paint up. If you go in heavy handed, you'll just end up painting it silver. But we want to highlight the high spots and leave all the low areas in shade, and let a wash do the work for us. I'm not just too sure if the push rods weren't painted black. I don't know. I may need to do a bit of research, but I think leaving them bright silver would be okay. And you see I'm going in at a different angle here just to catch different parts to add to the finish, and then just reverse it so you get it even on both sides of the cylinders. There we go. And we'll just give this one a once over again. There we go, dry brushed engines. They look really rather nice. Now, I primed the inside black here, but I'm actually going to spray this interior green, or we may actually use a bit of zinc chromate green. But if we put the cowling on, and then if we can get that focused onto my hand, get a bit of light to bounce off that, you can see that engine nicely in there. They are quite deep in the cells, so you are really only going to see the front row. That's fine. Got the props off here, we can pop them on, and you're going to see even less of the propeller on, so it's just the way it is. Right, next I'm just going to clean this brush off. Be careful when you clean the brushes as well. You don't want to get silver paint everywhere. So just do them separately away from everywhere else. And make sure they're fully clean before you use them for anything else. Because silver paint has a habit of lingering, and you don't want to contaminate whatever you use the brush for next with silver paint. As I found out to my cost many a time, and I'm sure there's many other modelers who have done the same. If you really want to get your brushes clean, get yourself some cellulose thinners, and that'll strip acrylic paints out of a brush beautifully. Right, want to get ourselves a more detailed type brush, and I need to put my reading glasses on or I'm not going to see this. So you can see this is a really nice neutral grey paint. It's heavily pigmented, so it goes down on a nice opaque finish, and with a little bit of X20A in, it dries beautifully. Now I can see. Yes, unfortunately I've had to get new reading glasses just the other week, so I'm realising that with my age my eyesight is not as good as it used to be. However, the difference new glasses makes is huge. So just put a bit of X20A in there, and this is the beauty with the Revell pots, is that the lids come off and clip on the side, so you've got your little paint pot here, your paint palette where you've got your paint, and if you want to thicken it you can just take and put some in. These paints are quite thick, they thin down quite a way, so for value for money they're actually really good value for money. And they last for ages. These pots are really old and they thin forever, so you just want to be gentle and careful where we're putting the paint. Let the brush do the work for us. See if I can get it in focus, might help I suppose, and get you in the shot. So He's just running it down the side. And as I said before, it's a shame that these engines are actually missing the magnetos. But it is what it is. There are a couple of different aftermarket engines you can get. I think Ares does an aftermarket engine, if I remember rightly, and there is a white metal engine you can get for this kit. Both of them you can get from Hanat's in London, and they're not too expensive. But I was quite happy just to build this one straight out of the box, so I'm just using the kit engines. There you go. So that's that paint on. Just any areas where there's lacking a bit, just touch it in and then leave it. And this paint will dry absolutely beautifully. Second engine, same again. And I really don't have much on the brush. It is just a really good quality paint. Unfortunately with Revell, they don't number their paints with a numbering system that reflects military colours. So if you want to match them correctly to whatever you're building, you'll need to go and look for a colour chart that lists Revell paints. But for brush painting, you'll find them hard to beat. And there we go. So that's both engines nicely painted up, ready to dry for a wash. Right, next then we've got to cut out these ignition harness circuits. Not quite sure, I think that'll be silver coloured here, and then these leads here I think are a tan colour, but we'll need to check the references. So I'm going to take 5 minutes to cut these out, and then we'll have a look and see how they fit, and then we need to think about painting up the interior of these as well as in here, because these two photo etch grills actually sit in here, so we'll need to paint these an interior green color as well. So let me clean my brush, we'll get the airbrush organized, and we'll get these off ready to work with. So back in a moment.